Okay, we are live.
Please rise as you are able. I now call this meeting of City Council to order.
We acknowledge that this meeting tonight is taking place on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. The Anishinaabe, there we are, thank you. The Anishinaabe include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. We're dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. Please be seated. Okay, members of council, I've called this special meeting for one reason only. There was significant interest from a majority of members of council last week and a wide variety of views as to what, if any, additional restrictions should be introduced on our waterfront. Obviously, events have overtaken us a little bit in the last few days, with province today announcing the phase 3 opening, which will permit gatherings of up to 100 people in our parks. And obviously a significant move to relaxing some of the restrictions at the provincial level. And also, of course, a cooler weekend than we've had previously. The heat finally broke. That all notwithstanding, I know our staff put together some responses to councillors' questions last week in the form of a presentation. So I'm simply going to hand this over to our CAO. Before we get started, our clerk, I know there are a series of motions proposed for some parking restrictions on streets surrounding beaches. Are there any other motions that members of council wish to bring forward tonight? Okay, so the clerk has all of them. That's good, because this is a council meeting, and so we have to have them in written form. So we will do those after the presentation from the CAO. Mr. Prowse.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman, members of council, and the executive team. We thought we would take the opportunity to provide perhaps a brief summary for members of council and the public, provide a little bit of context on some of what we were observing, some of the recommendations we made, and where we can potentially go from here based on council's direction, which really brings us here tonight. So I know the slides have been circulated in advance. I won't spend a lot of time on each slide, but I will try to frame a little bit of context. And my counterpart Ryan will do the driving of the slides. So we'll try to keep them in. We'll try to keep them in sync. But Ryan, could you give me the next slide, please? And I'll hope my voice holds up. So perfect. Thanks, Ryan. So members of council, we wanted to give you an overview of staff's key messages, and I'll go into a little bit of detail, but not a lot of detail on each slide. And I wanted to acknowledge that based on our observations, while there has been some overcrowding at the smaller beaches and parking challenges, there has generally been strong compliance when requested pretty much across the board. In addition, there has been no specific evidence of a community transmission spike since the beach is opened. Restricting beach access to non-residents poses potential legal issues. I mention that because it has been raised, I think, both in written form to the city and to members of council. We didn't have that specific question, but we should probably, frame that for tonight. Restricting parking access is clearly the more appropriate tool utilized by, at this point, almost all waterfront municipalities in some form or function with varying degrees of success. And you really only need to pick up a local or regional paper to see that we are really not in this alone. We are all struggling with the what I described, the perfect storm of COVID, which includes very little distraction for our younger members of the community, very hot, dry weather, and the direction from our health professionals that we should be outdoors if we're going to be out. And that in our situation and many situations brings everybody to the waterfront. Full closure of the beaches or the parks certainly is an option potentially for council. It is not one that your executive management team or the emergency control group have recommended to date. But staff would require direction from council should you opt to move forward with a closed approach to the beaches or continue with the open approach with some modifications. The implementation would occur with a combination of city staff and contracted resources to be able to do as much as possible in a timely manner. Can I get the next slide, Ryan, please? So for a few weeks now, the city has seen numerous messages, and certainly members of council are intimately familiar with them, attempting to link the waterfront area concerns in general to COVID-19. I raise that issue because I think it's important for the community that we talk about what is and what isn't a reality today. Various health experts have stated that the risk of contracting COVID outside is significantly less than indoors. Locally, the beaches have been open approximately for about a month, and while Barrie's parks have never been closed. The beaches and parks have been much busier, as members of council will know, for almost all of that time with the incredible hot, dry weather. Overcrowding has certainly been identified as a general concern of the health unit, but not specifically to Barrie itself. And there has been some noted overcrowding that members of council will be familiar with that has been captured at our smaller beaches, certainly in the last week or so. To date, we have no evidence of a spike in the community of a spread of COVID-19 in Barrie since the beaches have been opened. And in fact, instead, there actually has been an ongoing reduction in cases, as members of council would be aware. Next slide, please, Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. I wanted to provide you with an update on the waterfront measures that have already been instituted as part of council direction. These are the measures that the city has already undertaken to address concerns around the waterfront and the activities in general. Council approved the non-resident waterfront parking rate to increase to $10 an hour with a daily maximum of $50. We have since made application to the ministry for the higher fines associated with that. However, the timing for those approvals is still unknown. Resident waterfront parking passes only have been added in Dark Road and Gavel and the Gables parking lot, as well as a small section surrounding the Wilkins Park remain. Additional education and awareness signage has already been put in place and continues to be put up. And we have advanced increased patrols by municipal law enforcement, Barrie Police, as well as our park ambassadors to ensure that we are getting education and compliance shared with the community at large. Next slide, please, Ryan. I wanted to provide the general observations for members of council that we have really gleaned from both enforcement, that being municipal law enforcement, but as well as Barrie Police, as well as our park ambassadors who routinely patrol the parks to educate and advise the public, as well as information we get back from our general operations staff, our recreation teams, and in fact, even our lifeguards. Overall, you can see above the general observations for our waterfront and our parks. Now, I know to the public, oftentimes it will appear that we are getting more congregations than potentially we are. But when you are driving by, there is a different view than when you actually walk the park or you walk the beaches. And we have regular feedback from our various teams. And where there is an issue, we certainly act. But for the most part, generally, we are finding that the public is complying. And where there are cases where they are not complying, we are in the end getting compliance through education and awareness. Next slide, please, Rob. Specifically to Wilkins and Tyndale, members of council will be aware that the mayor updated his emergency order, I believe it was about a week ago, that was based on recommendations from staff. That came to a head because of the specific safety and environmental issues that we were facing, certainly at Wilkins, and we have recommended those additional temporary measures for Wilkins and Tyndale. Those measures included resident-only waterfront pass area to be extended to the adjacent streets, the banning of barbecues as a pilot project in all of Wilkins Park, not just the beach or the park, all of Wilkins Park, due to the environmental protection area that makes up a good portion of that area. We have moved away from the education piece for those two areas and have moved to no more verbal warnings, and municipal law enforcement are issuing tickets for all infractions at Wilkins and Tyndale when they come across them. In addition, operations has added additional beach cleanup to target those smaller beaches that don't typically get the same level of service for garbage collection as our larger spots do. But given the nature of the summer and the volume of people, we've added additional resources to provide that. Options for members of council as it relates to non-resident restrictions. We wanted to flesh out some of this for your information. The issue of controlling non-resident access is one all waterfront communities are struggling with in general, and it's certainly heightened by this perfect storm of hot, dry weather, limited recreation options for the kids, and as I mentioned earlier, the push to continue to do things outdoors. Council should be aware that while resident-only parking is possible and can be extended, the idea of preventing non-resident access to those public spaces is problematic, to say the least, both from a purely legal perspective and then compounded by an inability to operationalize that direction. Next slide. I think you may have gotten one too fast for me, right? Options on parking, it should slide. I'm trying to catch you, right? Give me the next slide, right? Options on parking. Thank you. I think I must have got those out of sequence. So council does have options, and staff have laid out some of the options on a more aggressive approach to restricting non-resident parking. Resident parking permits certainly can be expanded through direction of council, and enforcement can move, if desired, from a ticketing to more of a towing mentality. However, that does have some implications as they are difficult to reverse and will certainly capture Barrie residents as well as potentially out-of-towners. Next slide, please, Ron. Should council desire a more stringent level of enforcement across the board, we could adopt a zero tolerance approach as it comes to issuing of tickets. Although there remains limitations on the enforcement because of resourcing issues and challenges. In addition, council should be advised that a zero tolerance approach will invariably ticket Barrie residents as well at the same time, and council should be aware of the additional complaints this approach could generate because likely it will be your phones ringing as well as the city's phones, members of council. Next slide, please, Ryan. In addition, we fleshed out some alternatives for council to consider based on our observations of the waterfront. Should council again wish to adopt some more stringent criteria, other measures that council could consider could include the prohibiting of barbecues in all parks. You could consider prohibiting tents and shade structures in the parks and beaches. You could direct staff to install the circles and picnic squares for the parks. Council could direct the not allowing of the sitting or sunbathing on the beaches. I think Innisfil is using that approach today. The beaches in motion, I think, is how they have coined it. And certainly, council could direct staff to fence off sections of the beach or park in an effort to restrict capacity limits. Although, as highlighted already, checking for identification for place of residency would not be part of that function. Next slide, please, Rick. Generally speaking, the approach could take several forms as noted, and we've highlighted here, you know, the versions of open to all, or finally, the reality is closed to all. Those are really the two binary choices as it relates to council's decision If open to all, certainly various forms of restrictions could be considered or advanced enforcement should council desire. And at the end of the day, certainly the idea of closing the parks or closing the beaches is also a question that would sit with council. Last slide, please, Ryan. Members of council, I've pretty much told you what you already know, but I thought I would recap it for you here tonight, really with the intent that it'll feed into a discussion, and certainly your staff are on the line and available to answer any questions you might have as we look for additional direction as it relates to council's desire on the waterfront, beaches, and parks. Mayor Lehman, that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Prose. Before we get to the motions that have been prepared on parking, members of council, I'll ask if there are questions for Mr. Prose. Any questions, members of council? Councillor Kungle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to CEO Prowse. Just for those watching this evening, and it was nice to see the park ambassadors being leveraged in the situation. Could you share more about how the communication might change or is being effective through park ambassadors if they are on select waterfronts? I'm not sure if you have that information on hand, or maybe it's something that could be added to the FAQ document if it's not readily available. But a couple of pieces from a public communication: are our park ambassadors easy to identify and distinguish between bylaw? And would they be individuals that could help accentuate or be an added resource? I didn't see them. They were identified as a current resource, but I didn't see them as listed as an opportunity to add more or help to generate some warnings or communicate what fines would be. So wondering if there's an opportunity to further leverage park ambassadors, or at least provide communication to the public about where you will see them and what to expect from them.
Thank you, Councillor Congo, for the question. Through you from Mayor Lehman. I would defer that to Ms. McAlpine, who was kind enough to join us from her vacation as well. So I will defer to Ms. McAlpine.
Thank you, Michael. The Parks Ambassadors are an additional tool that they are used to promote the city, provide education and awareness. They do provide information with respect to the city's existing bylaws, what the fine rates are, what the parking fees are, but they are not able to issue tickets or notices of violation.
As a follow-up through you, Mayor Lehman, to Ms. McAlpine, are they easily identifiable through either cityware or otherwise, just as a cueing for the public to either proactively approach or to know you've got someone in your parks and perhaps waterfront that can assist you if you've got questions to make sure we can reduce some of these avoidable missteps that could happen?
Yes, they are wearing bright yellow, lime green colored shirts that say staff on them. So they are quite distinguishable from our municipal law enforcement officers. And they are wearing brightly colored clothing to identify themselves.
Thank you. And are they located, for the follow-up, are they located on any particular waterfronts or parks? Or is it a broader approach from where they're being allocated?
So there's currently one team that runs essentially from Heritage Park to Johnson's Beach. There is another team that looks after Heritage Park to South Shore, and then a further team that is dealing with South Shore and Manette's Dock Road area. Previously, we had that team also looking at Wilkins and Tyndale, but given that we've moved to strict enforcement in that area, without warnings, it would be a little confusing for people if the Parks Ambassadors were giving warnings and the information that's out in the public is that there aren't warnings. So we've refocused our efforts with the three main areas only extending to Tyndale, to Manette's.
Thank you, Ms. McElhine. That's all my questions.
Thanks, Councillor Kungle. Councillor Harvey, I know you're on the phone. Thank you for dialing in to get here tonight. Did you have a question, Councillor Harvey?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you just fine.
Yeah, I was just wondering if CAO Prowse, or I don't know if someone from legal can elaborate a little bit more on the legal issues related to this, because it was mentioned a few times in the presentation, and I think it's good for the public to know, but also too, I'll be quite honest with you, I'm still really struggling to understand what legal ramifications could be around having stricter conditions, if not closing off the beaches to non-residents.
Mr. Prowse.
Mayor Lehman, I see Ms. Peters is on the line. Perhaps she could start off, and if need be, I can add.
Lateral to Ms. Peters.
Okay. So the question of whether it's illegal for a municipality to impose a ban on non-residents, it's not a straightforward, simple answer. First of all, there's no express prohibition in either the Municipal Act or the Charter or the Human Rights Code if a municipality wishes to restrict access to its facilities to its residents. So there's nothing obviously in writing that says you can't do that. All of the prohibitions and the consequences come through challenges to your actions that would happen in a court of law. The number of ways that can manifest itself are endless. The consequences of your ban, if I want to call it that, would likely be focused on the actual enforcement efforts. I've had a look at it myself. I've referred the matter to Weir Folds. I received some written analysis from Weir Folds just before this meeting started, which concluded essentially what we had already concluded, which is that you can't find a provision in a piece of legislation that expressly prevents it. But the risk for challenge to that on the basis of those very same, on the basis of those very same pieces of legislation, can't be discounted. What will happen is that an aggrieved party will take the matter to court, and it won't be until a judge rules on it in all the circumstances that you'll know whether you've been successful or not. I mean, in the end, the devil is all in the details. If you've got a very logical, well-analyzed bylaw, which is based on research and seems to be following a logic based on evidence, you may be able to succeed in deflecting that challenge, but you won't know until it happens.
Mayor Lehman, if I can just piggyback on that, the second piece of that is how you operationalize that type of restriction. That would require effectively either security or municipal law enforcement requiring people to identify themselves through some sort of acceptable identification to allow them access. It's my understanding, subject to correction from either Ingrid or Dawn, that is not a power that municipal law enforcement has for those purposes. Well, for any purposes and not for those purposes.
That's correct with municipal law, not to mention the various circumstances to evidence what is a resident, how do you prove residency, and so on.
Councillor Harvey?
Nothing further. I'll accept that answer.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Morales, question.
Thank you, Mary Lehman. My question is, Ms. McAlpine, the ambassadors that with the yellow shirts that don't have the ticketing abilities, would it be a concern for us that we have actual enforcement people and non-enforcement people? Would it be a concern that the non-enforcement people would take away the enforcement credibility of the enforcement people? And essentially people who visit the park say, well, these people in yellow shirts spoke to us, but we quickly found out they have no ticketing ability, so they take less seriously our actual enforcement people. I just don't want the ambassadors to detract away from actual enforcement. And I see in this kind of scenario that this might be something, in which case I would personally want to stick to just our enforcement capability.
Mayor Lehman to Councillor Morales, that hasn't been the case to date. People are actually quite appreciative of the opportunity to be informed by the Parks ambassadors. And the Parks ambassadors are carrying phones and are able to contact the municipal law enforcement officers if someone refuses to comply. And they have indicated that when necessary.
Okay, interesting. Perfect. I didn't expect that answer, but that's why I asked the question. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Morales. Did anyone else indicate with a question for Mr. Prowse? I don't think so. Okay. I'm aware there are a number of motions on the parking side. Councillor Mccann and Councillor Thompson have had them prepared. Councillor Mccann, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Everyone hear me all right?
Charlie, do I have to bring in mine first just to accept the report, or is that later?
Sorry, Deputy Mayor Ward, I think you're quite right. We do need, if we're going to do this by way of amendments to your motion, yes, we do need that. So thank you. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Okay.
Thanks.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that the presentation by Michael Prowse, CAO, concerning the waterfront operations update be received.
Okay, it's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by, I'm sorry, your seconder was?
Councillor Thompson.
Councillor Thompson, that the presentation be received. Any comments or questions on the motion? Okay, those in favor, please indicate. Anyone opposed? None. That carries unanimously. Amendments, sorry, I guess while we probably want to do this by way of amendments to that motion. So go ahead, Ann, at this point.
So did you just clue me in there, Mayor Jeff?
Yeah, you're up.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got 4 amendments. So moved by myself, second by Councillor Robert Thompson, that the motion be received, the presentation concerning the waterfront operations update be amended to add the following paragraphs. Number 1, that the emergency order and applicable bylaws be amended to extend residential waterfront pass, only restrictions be the class as waterfront parking / lots with a 500 minimum walking distance of Wilkins Park be put in effect until October 15th, 2020. The streets that are involved would be Caps Drive, Crimson Ridge between Caps Drive and Tamarack Trail, Blue Water Trail, Sandalwood Court, Valley View Court, and Royal Park between Tamarack and Crimson Ridge. And that the estimated cost of the signage of $8,500 be funded from the Council's Strategic Priority Reserve. Number 2, that staff and Legislation and Court Services Department and Court and Services send an amendment to the application to the Minister of the Attorney General as follows. Number A, to increase the set fine of $100 for paid parking infractions at these locations. B, to increase early payment of $75 for parking infractions at these locations. Thank you.
Okay, have these motions been circulated to members of council? Councillor McCann?
Maybe Wendy can answer that way. We got these kind of at the 9th hour, so I'm not sure if the clerk passes on.
Ms. Cook, have these been circulated? Sorry, Ms. Cook, I think you're still on mute.
Mayor Lehman, I have not circulated them as they were, again, prepared at the 11th hour, but I can circulate them right now. So my apologies for that.
Okay, if you would, that would be helpful.
So just to tap in, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll read it again, Councillor McCann, then you can speak to it if that works.
Sure.
Reading that again while the clerk is circulating these amendments. The motion to receive the presentation is amended by adding the following paragraphs: that the emergency order and applicable bylaws be amended to extend resident waterfront pass parking only restrictions and classify as waterfront parking or lots within a 500-meter distance of Wilkins Park. And that is Caps Drive, Crimson Ridge Road between Caps and Tamarack Trail, Blue Water Trail, Sandalwood Court, Valley View Court. Did you have one more, Councillor Mccann? I didn't have.
Royal Park between Tamarack and Crimson Ridge.
Royal Park between Tamarack and Crimson Ridge, and that the estimated cost for the signage of $8,500 be funded from the Council Strategic Priorities Reserve. 2, that staff in the Legislative and Court Services Department send an amendment to the application of the Ministry of the Attorney General to set the fines as $100 with $75 for early payment. That's what's on the floor. Councillor Mccann, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I don't really have too much more to add with that, Councillor Prowse, that CEO Prowse had mentioned in his presentation. But first, as we all know, because of COVID-19, because of the extreme hot weather that we've had, other municipalities deflecting some of their beach traffic, the city of Barrie and our boutique and beautiful waterfront has had an increase of cars, and a lot of the residents believe that this is out-of-towners. I personally myself did a series of investigations at a few parks, one being Wilkinson, and found that during the week it was predominantly all Barrie residents, but during the weekend it was most definitely a lot of out-of-towners. So I'm asking council to include these streets for no parking, for only for resident parking. Thank you, Mayor Lehman.
Okay, on the amendment, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Yeah, just a quick, I support it. Just a quick question for the mover of the motion. I noticed it's only until October 15th this year. Is that because you anticipate looking at it again when the parking strategy comes out, or why isn't this being made permanent? I don't think the problem's going to go away this year.
Go ahead, Councillor Mccann.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. That was the suggestion of staff that we make it until October. I think that we're doing a little test market is a good thing. And when the parking strategy comes out, I wouldn't want something that we decided to do just for the summer, affect negatively for the whole rest of the year. So this gives, I think this serves two purposes. It solves our problem for the summer increased traffic flow from out-of-towners, and it also gives staff an ammunition that if they saw some problems, they don't need to come to council to switch it. They can include that in their staff report or in their parking strategy in October.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Mccann.
Councillor Kundal.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Mccann, or perhaps to staff. I'm just looking at the estimated cost of signage being $8,500. I didn't know if that cost was based on assuming permanent parking signage, or if it's not permanent and something we're looking at changing in October. Is there a different signage approach that's less expensive? I'm assuming it's been considered, but thought to ask because it is a bit of a steep ticket for a temporary solution.
Ms. James Reid.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Kungl. The quote that is included in the motion for each of the motions that you see tonight is based on a temporary signage. And as indicated by CAO Prowse, it would be an outsourced in order for us to do this within a reasonable time. So that does include a temporary signage.
Thank you.
Councillor Jim Harris.
Great, thank you, Mayor Lehman. Maybe through you to Councillor Mccann. I was wondering, Councillor McCann, thank you for this list. I think it's really positive and comprehensive in response to the issues at Wilkins. And I see it, having just gotten these, noting also there's some streets that are coming up later that would appear to be focusing on dealing with the challenges on Tyndale, which obviously is interesting to me as well. So thank you for those as well. One of the parks that I've seen is missing in the discussion today that I've brought forward, it's a good conversation with staff, so I thank you, the staff I've spoken to, is Manette's Point Park. It's yet to be identified, and I did have some conversations and sent a list of streets to staff, and just gave us, I noticed that that the list is not there, and maybe that's my miss, so I'll own that if that is the case. But I was wondering if it was a friendly, if I could add, whether it would be appropriate here, or whether the list is coming up shortly with that's more Tyndale focused, but if I could add some streets as a friendly, if that's a possibility. I do have a list of streets around Manette's Point that, again, are very small streets, no sidewalks, not built for large volumes of traffic, that neighbors and residents would be very appreciative of having restrictions placed on.
So, Councillor Harris, yeah, I believe, and I'll ask the mover of the motion if he does intend to introduce the later motion with regards to Tyndale. I think that's related to Dock Road. But if that one's going to come forward, it would make sense to add the list there. I guess the broader concern I have is, Councillor Mccann, were you able to consult with the ward councillors in preparing these amendments?
If you want to stretch the word consult, I'll say yes, but no deep conversation as this was put forth today. I did send the email out to the councillors. And so if you're asking me, did I have a deep discussion with all the councillors around the beach areas? No, but I thought this was a forum that they would be able to have bring an amendment for as well.
Okay, so Councillor Harris, I know, had been interested for about a week now in getting some of these streets into an amendment. So Councillor Harris, up to you. I mean, you can amend Councillor McCann's or put forward your own motion.
Okay, so thank you, Mayor Lehman. Thank you, Councillor McCann. Yeah, Manette's Point clearly is Ward 8, so I know we've talked about Tyndale, and I appreciate that. I wasn't aware that I thought there would be a discussion tonight to sort this out, so apologies. So yeah, wherever it goes, as long as the outcome is the same, that list of streets is noted and addressed. So I can do it now. I can list them now, or I can.
So my suggestion would be, why don't we deal with this one, which is for the area around Wilkins. When Councillor McCann introduces the next one for Tyndale, you can just add paragraphs for each street that you want to add to the list. I assume the parking restriction would be the same, that you're seeking the resident waterfront pass only.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lehman. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so let's do that if you're amenable, Councillor Harris. And okay, did you have anything else on this you wanted to say, Jim, while we're on you? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. That's perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Ward on the amendment.
Just for Councillor Hurwitz's purposes, I have an amendment in front of me that the ones that were distributed that lists all the streets around Manette's Point. I'm not sure if you've seen it yet. I know you just got them, so maybe he hasn't, but there is one that lists Lismore, Brennan, Southview, Cliff, Campview, all the ones within 500 meters of Manette's Point. So I think it is being taken care of later. Maybe he hasn't had a chance to see it yet.
Ms. Cook, could you shed some light on this one for us?
So I prepared a list of amendments just in case they were introduced tonight. The only one that confirmed amendments before the meeting was Councillor Mccann. So that's why I only circulated the ones from Councillor Mccann right now. I do have a list with the rest of them, and I can circulate that list as well.
Okay, well, given we're in the meeting now, why don't we circulate everything to everybody, make sure everyone's got it in front of them. Councillor McCann can proceed with, I mean, this one's in his ward, and proceed with others that he wishes to move. And then if there are other members of council that want to move additional amendments, we can do that too. If Ms. Cook, you can circulate everything you've got to all members of council, that would be helpful. I know we're doing this on the fly. Councillor McCann, we are on your amendment now for the streets around Wilkins Beach. Are there others who wish to comment on this particular amendment? Councillor Aylwin.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I do just have a few questions for staff. So I believe it was less than a week ago, we instituted the no tolerance policy for the bylaw infractions, just not giving any warnings and just ticketing straight away at Wilkins Beach. Do we have any information on how that's going, if the situation's improved, because it's been less than a week. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that, maybe whoever, maybe Ms. McAlpine.
Mr. Prowse or Ms. McAlpine?
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I can advise that the signage went up on Thursday, and there have been a number of tickets, 17 in the Crimson and Caps area for parking, and 22 in the Tyndale area. And as well, there have been 5 Part 1 tickets that have been issued since the signage went up. And as you'll recall, Saturday was not probably our best day weather-wise for people to be out at the beach, but that's the update with respect to that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I have another question for you, Ms. McAlpine. Do we know, would we be able to enforce these additional parking restrictions in this area? And if so, would there be a cost associated with that as well?
Through Mayor Lehman to Councillor Elwin, certainly we do have limited resources. We can continue to refocus our resources and prioritize based on need. We have upped our resources by increasing our part-time staff hours to full-time staff to try and put additional boots on the ground. That's something where we're running at a limit in terms of those who are available. Barrie Police Service has offered to assist with their resources as well, as they're able to issue tickets, and they have been out in addition to the ones that I cited from our municipal law enforcement. So we'll continue to press our resources unless council wishes to redeploy staff from other areas of enforcement, such as property standards or yard maintenance. Those we will continue to rotate our staff around, but we won't have any additional resources beyond that. They can continue to address patrols as matters come up.
Thanks for that answer. And as a follow-up, so does that mean theoretically we could be seeing the officers who are currently enforcing some of the measures on the beach in terms of physical distancing, gathering, littering, barbecues, will we see some of those officers be taken away from those beaches to enforce this parking instead?
Certainly there are staff that are working through the waterfront on bike patrols or on foot, and then other staff supplement them with the parking. They also do parking while they're out. So it's really a case of spreading your resources. They are already in the areas. It's just a case of the time to write the tickets, if there are violations, of course.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question for the mover of the motion, Councillor Mccann. Wondering if you've had a chance to consider some of the potential overflow effects of these restrictions. Do you anticipate that it could push non-residents to park in other neighborhoods nearby? Is that something you've considered in your motion?
Councillor Mccann.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Yes, of course, I've considered that. And I believe it was in the staff report that they investigated that people are willing to walk a maximum of 500 meters to get to a beach. And so with the amount of emails and the amount of meetings that I've had, Ms. Miller and I and most of the staff members, this is a very hyped up, amped area, and we need to put some water on it very quickly. And so I have thought about it, and I believe this is the best solution.
I appreciate that answer. Thank you. So just to speak to it quickly, I am having a hard time with this because I'm not entirely clear yet which issue we're trying to solve. Are we concerned about the possible spread of COVID-19 at our beaches due to overcrowding? Are we concerned about the violations we're seeing in terms of litter barbecues, etc. on those beaches. It's not entirely clear to me because I'm hearing from our staff and from the health unit that the spread of COVID-19 is not a concern on our beaches at this time, and that most of the commuter transmission will be happening indoors and not outdoors. So I think we need to be very clear with the public and with ourselves what issue we're trying to solve here. So is this a matter of residents who may have very valid concerns about not being able to get to the beach in their neighborhood because there are people from out of town? Do we even know if there are people from out of town causing the issues? I'm not entirely convinced that that is where the issue stems from. I would prefer to see our resources used to ensure compliance on the beaches, no matter who is there. And I'm worried that these sorts of measures may take valuable enforcement hours, as Ms. McAlpine said, spread out the enforcement resources too thin, when we need to be really hyper-focused on the so-called problem areas along the waterfront. So I'm just really struggling to support this, but I'm willing to hear more from council, but leaning towards a no at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Owen. Others who wish to speak to the amendment? Okay, I'm going to support it in part because this one is addressing Wilkins, and as I've said before, first of all, I want to thank the residents. If any of them are either watching or read this later, I did have a number of them email on the weekend and say thank you for what has been done, because obviously this weekend was a lot quieter. I frankly think that had more probably to do with the weather than it did our own measures, but they appreciate the efforts that have been taken, and it was a much different story at Wilkins this weekend. That being said, Wilkins Walk and Beach were never designed to be a public beach. We've talked about this before. There's no parking lot, there's no washrooms, there's limited garbage, and if these parking restrictions can help ease the problems that are being experienced at Wilkins Beach, then I'm in support of them. So I'll be supporting this particular amendment. And with that, I will call the question on this one. Those in favor, please indicate. Any opposed? One. Okay, that carries by a majority. Councillor Mccann, I believe you have more amendments. Now, actually, Councillor Mccann, I did see there's one in here for redesignating the status of a couple of the lots on the edge of the downtown. Maybe we could do that last, because I know you've got several other similar amendments that address parking restrictions around the smaller beaches. Just while we're on the topic, if you wouldn't mind doing those first, that probably makes sense.
Sure. So the next one that I have, as you have in the order, is that one. So you want me to do that one last?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, not a problem.
Okay. The next one that I'm seeing is with regards to Centennial.
Yes. So I'm talking, yes. Yeah, Centennial Beach, correct. You okay with that one going next?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Okay, that is moved by myself, second by Councillor Robert Thompson, that the motion to be received, the presentation concerning the waterfront operations update, be amended to add the following paragraphs. Number one, that the emergency order and applicable bylaws be amended to extend resident waterfront pass only restrictions to be classified as waterfront parking/lots, be put in effect until October 15th, 2020. Number 8, Vesper Street between Innisfil Street and Bradford Street. B, Victoria Street between Innisfil Street and Sanford Street. C, John Street between Sanford Street and Ellen Street. D, Sanford Street between Vesper and John Street. E, Ellen Street south of Victoria on the west side only. And the signage to be installed at an estimated cost of $3,000 to be funded from the Council Strategic Priority Reserve. Number 2, that staff and Legislative Court Service Department, Force and Services, send an amendment to the application to the Ministry of Attorney General as follows: to increase a set fine of $100 to paid parking infractions at these locations. B, to increase the early payment of $75 for parking infractions at these locations.
Okay, members of council, we have an amendment. It's similar in structure to the previous one. It reads that the emergency order and applicable bylaws be amended to extend resident waterfront pass only restrictions and classify as waterfront parking / lots until October 15th on the following streets: Vesper from Innisfil to Bradford, Victoria from Innisfil to Sanford, John from Sanford to Ellen, Sanford from Vesper to John, and Ellen south of Victoria, west side only. The signage for this area will cost $3,000. Also, council strategic priorities reserve, and that staff in legislative and court services be asked to apply for the $100 set fine and $75 early payment. Councillor Mccann, did you want to say anything by way of introducing this?
Sure. You know, pretty much the same thing is happening on all over our beach area, and I understand that Deputy Mayor Ward has had some concerns with some of these streets. So nothing really more to add than what I had last amendment.
Okay, I'll go to the ward councillor next. Councillor Aylwin.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I don't have any questions at this point or comments.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Ward, did you want to speak to this? No? Anyone want to speak to this particular one? Councillor Riepma.
I guess I would like to know, probably from staff, this is a very busy area, and there's lots of high density buildings in this area. Is there any kind, or should we be thinking about any kind of unintended consequences of doing this? Is there anything that we should be thinking about that after we've done this that is going to come back to bite us? So just in terms of maybe an answer from staff on that.
Ms. James Reid.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Riepma. I'm actually going to invite Brent Forsyth to join in because he has the detailed parking strategy comments to make.
Mr. Forsyth.
Good afternoon, Council. Through Mayor Lehman to Councillor Riepma. The reason why we chose these specific streets is actually, if you were to look at our traffic bylaw today, there's a lot of streets in this area that are already completely restricted. These are the segments of the streets that there are no restrictions in place right now. So anybody, regardless of parking passes or not, could park on these segments of the street. So basically what we're doing is putting, it would be suggested putting the City of Barrie resident waterfront pass restriction on these seats, or sorry, on these streets to manage the spillover and hopefully force more of the non-residents into the actual paid lots.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments or questions on this one? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the amendment, please indicate. Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Councillor Mccann.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Now, Mayor Lehman, a little procedure. So Councillor Harris, Jim Harris, has a few more streets. Is it okay that I stop and maybe let him say his streets in mid-sentence, or would you prefer him to do a friendly?
Probably the cleanest thing to do is for you to introduce your amendment, and then I'll call on Councillor Harris to just add his streets, okay?
Sure. Okay, fair enough.
Go ahead, Councillor Mccann.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. This is moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Robert Thompson that the motion received in the presentation concerning the waterfront operations update be amended to add the following: that the emergency order and applicable bylaws be amended to extend resident waterfront pass only restrictions to be classified as waterfront parking / lots be put in effect until October 15th, 2020. The streets are Dock Road between Turner Drive and Golden Meadow Boulevard, Turner Drive between Dock Road and Royal Park Boulevard, Bayshore Boulevard, Clearwater Court, Tyndale Road between Jean Street and Dock Road, and Plunkage Court. And the site is to be installed at an estimate cost of $10,000 be funded from the Council Strategic Priority Reserves. Number 2, that staff and legislative court service departments send an amendment to the application to the Ministry of the Attorney General as follows. Number A, to increase a set fine of $100 for paid parking infractions at these locations. And at number B, to increase the early payment of $75 for parking infractions at these locations.
Okay, thank you. We have an amendment moved by Councillor Mccann, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that the emergency order and applicable bylaws be amended to extend resident waterfront parking pass only restrictions to Dock Road between Turner and Golden Meadow, Turner between Dock and Royal Park, Bayshore Boulevard, Clearwater Court, Tyndale Road between Jean and Dock, and Plunkage Court. The signage for this area will cost $10,000 from the Strategic Priorities Reserve, and that staff apply for the $100 fine and the $75 early payment. Councillor Mccann, anything you want to say about this one?
I don't think I have anything else to say, really. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Harris, did you want to speak to this one? Jim Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. And I would like to offer an amendment at this time, if I could add those streets that would cover Manette's Point, because I think it's the same principle. So as far as I know, I did see the list finally with the amendments, but there's one for later on, but I think it would be fine just to add it here. Is that fine to?
Sure.
Maybe add it here.
Did you want to add the same list, Councillor Harris, the A through H from the later amendment?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
So I can list them if you'd like me to.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Lismer Boulevard, Brennan Avenue between White Oaks and Southview Road, Cliff Road, Kempview Lane, Whitty Lane, the Boulevard, and White Oaks Boulevard. Thank you.
Sorry, Ms. Cook. Yep, see your hand now.
Okay. Mayor Lehman, there is an additional cost for signage for those areas that he might want to add to the amendment too, in the amount of $7,600.
Thank you. Councillor Harris, you okay with amending 10,000 to become 17,600?
Thank you. The math sounds right. Thank you.
Okay. So members of council, we have an amendment to the amendment that we're going to talk about first, which is adding the streets around Manette's Point, being Lismer Boulevard, Brennan between White Oaks and Southview, Cliff Road, Kempview Lane, Whitty Lane, the Boulevard, and White Oaks Boulevard. The amendment would also increase the $10,000 amount in Councillor Mccann's original amendment to $17,600 to cover the signage for this area. On that amendment, Councillor Jim Harris, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, it can be quick. Thank you, Mayor Lehman, and thank you, Councillor Mccann. We did talk about Tyndale, and I appreciate you covering those streets for the residents. Much appreciated. With Manette's Point, and I've been down there daily over the last week and a bit, and actually spoke with 2 bylaw enforcement officers and actually planned to do a tour, but thankfully it rained on Saturday, so for the bigger issue, it wasn't quite as busy. So I was going to get out there and learn from the bylaw enforcement officer what it's like to actually enact our policies in real life. So, but that offer still stands. We were going to go today too, but it rained again today. So if you want rain, just arrange me to get to see a bylaw officer in real life. Anyway, but I just wanted to say the residents, and I had lots of calls, lots of emails, but I also walked the neighborhood and actually spoke to folks who hadn't called and emailed. And those people who, quietly were putting up with the experience of the volumes, the overflow. These neighborhoods weren't built for the volumes we're experiencing because of COVID and because of our need to socially distance, physical distance, and reduce overcrowding. So there was a great deal of interest in this time-limited COVID-related experience having some restrictions to reduce, because these are neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks. They are not built for passing when there's cars on both sides, driveway blind spots. It's really treacherous getting through there. I talked to bylaw about the experience of even getting through EMS vehicles and such, and even passing by. And it's concerning. So thank you for including these. I hope you'll support this small beachfront community to be able to have a bit more safety in supporting of the COVID-19 crowding efforts that we're trying to manage. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Does anyone want to speak to Councillor Jim Harris's amendment? Okay, yeah, I'll just say briefly, thanks, Jim. You and I were talking by email, I think about 4 or 5 days ago about this list, and I entirely agree with you. Manette's Point has narrow streets. We need to be a little bit concerned, I think, about emergency access and issues like that. So I'm certainly going to support this amendment. And with that, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the amendment to the amendment, please indicate. Any opposed? None. That carries. On the main amendment, any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll call it. Oh, sorry, Councillor Thompson, did you want to speak?
The only question I had, maybe to staff, through you, Mayor Lehman, if the concern is with those streets that were just added of emergency vehicles, would it be better with no parking and not parking with waterfront access passes if it is a concern for the emergency vehicle? Just have no parking whatsoever?
Mr. Forsyth?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Thompson. The issue with no parking will have a negative effect on the residents themselves, potentially, in terms of being able to park their vehicles on the residential roadways. So by having the City of Barrie resident waterfront pass, it will allow them to continue to park on the roadways in front of their homes. Sorry, I'm not sure if I got that.
Just a follow up there, through you, Mayor Lehman. So if the safety concern is, and then it goes back to if they both park on both sides of the road, then it narrows the road for emergency vehicles. Would it be better then to have no parking on one side of the street and waterfront access for waterfront passes on the other? That way we're guaranteed a wide enough road for emergency vehicles.
Sorry, through Mayor Lehman to Councillor Thompson. Where we're adding the resident-only parking is currently where it is open to all parking. So those restrictions aren't those no parking restrictions aren't currently in place for emergency purposes. They already would be in place if that was the need. So basically, what we're doing is anywhere in these areas where anybody can park at this point, we're putting it as City of Barrie waterfront only. And in theory, we would probably see less people parking there because the spillover effect from the non-residents would be less.
Great. Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Anybody else on the amendment, on the current amendment? Everyone clear on what we're voting on? Okay, then I will call the question on the amendment as amended. Those in favor, please indicate. Any opposed? I do not see any. That carries. Councillor Mccann, go ahead.
Yes, so this is my last amendment for the evening. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Robert Thompson. That motion be received. The presentation concerning the waterfront operations update be amended to add the following paragraphs. That the emergency order and applicable bylaw be amended to extend residential waterfront pass only to restrictions to be classified as waterfront parking lots to be put at the end of October 15th, 2020. Number A. To classify Heritage Lot, Lakeshore Lot, Northern Marina Lot, and Spirit Culture lots as waterfront lots. Number B. To increase the hourly rate from $10 an hour to a daily rate of $50. Number 2. That staff and legislative and court service department send an amendment to the application to the Ministry of the Attorney General as follows. A, to increase the set fines for $100 for paid parking infractions at these lots. B, to increase an early payment of $75 for the parking infractions at these lots.
Okay, we have an amendment moved by Councillor Mccann, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that the emergency order and applicable bylaws be amended by reclassifying 3 of our downtown / waterfront lots. And those are the Heritage Park lot, the Lakeshore lot, North Marina lot, and the Spirit Catcher lot, to reclassify them as waterfront lots. And that sets the the new much higher hourly rate for non-residents, 10 an hour and 50 in total, up to 50 total, and as well to apply to the Ministry of the Attorney General for the $100 fine with the 75 early payment. Councillor Mccann, you want to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'll be brief. I want to change the classification for 2 reasons. One, we're $2 million in debt when it comes to parking. We need to climb out of that mountain. So this is a way that we'll be able to do that. by increasing the hourly and the daily. And second of all, make it consistent around the waterfronts.
Okay, thank you. Those who wish to speak to this amendment, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Thanks. First of all, a question. What is the Lakeshore lot? I've been trying to find it on the map. I can't see any listed as the Lakeshore lot, so I'm not sure what it is.
Mr. Forsyth, which one's the Lakeshore lot?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Ward. The Lakeshore lot is just north of the marina, lot. There's a series of 3 kind of gravel lots. The one right adjacent to the marina is the North Marina, and then there's 2 they're basically the old Lakeshore roadways, but they're 2 gravel lots right in that neighborhood.
Okay, thanks. And I guess for the mover of the motion, I'm wondering why Heritage Park lot was included in there. I know it's in the waterfront, but it's also used by people who are shopping downtown, eating downtown, and especially in the lots, the businesses that are on Dunlop Street East near Mulcaster. I know myself, I've used those lots, so I know we'd have a pass, but I think they'd also be appreciative of getting tourist dollars in that. And that one bothers me a bit. So I guess I'm curious as mover of the motion why that Heritage Park lot was included.
Councillor Mccann.
Sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing the Deputy Mayor. I'm not sure why. Could you repeat that again, please?
Sure. I'm wondering why Heritage Park lot was included. And then just in my experience, that lot is used by a lot of people that are shopping downtown or eating downtown or going to a pub downtown. I mean, it is a lot that a lot of the, I think a lot of the businesses on Mulcaster Street or on near the corner of Mulcaster and Dunlop are using, patrons of those are using. And that worries me a bit that we're going to include that in this fee.
Sure. Mayor Lehman?
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I actually consulted senior staff about these lots, and I understand Brett's coming up with his parking strategy, and I believe that this was something that was in their wheelhouse, and I just wanted to speed this up to get some consistency downtown.
Yeah, and I just worried. I mean, the businesses have been hard enough hit. We had the street closed, and then we've now there are other restrictions on them. They may be allowed to open, but even if only 50% capacity or whatever, I worry about this is going to be another blow to the downtown businesses. I feel more comfortable if they supported it, but I think that lot isn't used by a lot of waterfront people. I mean, it might be, but it's also used by a lot of people that are taking advantage of the stores, which are directly across the street from that. So I worry about including it in this motion.
Okay, thanks, Deputy Mayor Ward. Councillor Mccann.
Yeah, I did consult with senior staff members about this in a little more detail, and I guess Chase McCracken was left out of this parking strategy or this parking increase for the overflow of downtown. So, I mean, I'm not going to die on the sword for this one, Deputy Mayor Ward. But if staff would like to, Brett, maybe like to chime in and give some more color to Deputy Mayor Ward, please.
Mr. Forsyth, was there a reason why Heritage Park lot wasn't included?
Sorry, can you hear me? Oh, yes, sorry. I wasn't sure. Sorry. Through Mayor Lehman to Councillor Mccann. This has always been a struggle when we look at parking in terms of where to draw the line in terms of what's a waterfront lot versus what's a downtown lot based on the proximity of our downtown to our waterfront. And basically the recommendation here was similar to what Councillor Mccann had said, is that it is technically on the waterfront. There are some access points there as well. And so we basically are looking at drawing the line south of Coast Street, I guess is what it would be. There has been lots of confusion over the years about what you can use where and what passes you can use where. And so this would potentially clean that up a bit. But again, it's still not a perfect solution because as Councillor Mccann had said, Chase McCacken's right there too, just north, which would be a downtown.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mccann?
Yes, I do have actually one little amendment to my, one extra street to add that in the report, I just noticed that Tyndale Park wasn't included. I'd like to add Tyndale Park to that list. Sorry, Mayor Lehman.
Sorry, the part where we're reclassifying parking lots right now, were you looking to reclassify I'm sorry, I'm confused, Councillor Mccann, what you want to do?
So I just got a text, sorry, I'm just getting a text message from Brett. Forsyth, can you step in right now, please?
Ms. Cook's indicating, so I'll go to the clerk. Ms. Cook?
Mayor Lehman, Councillor Jim Harris is going to put an amendment on the floor concerning Tyndale Park after this one has been dealt with.
Okay, so let's get back on the amendment. Deputy Mayor Ward, I had exactly the same concern. That parking lot is used almost exclusively by customers of downtown businesses, and I think we'd be tipping over the line into really damaging the business community in the downtown if we reclassified heritage. So if you want to move an amendment on that one, I would certainly support that.
I'd be interested in, and there's another concern is that, it'll push people into the lots, it'll push people trying to avoid parking there. They're going to push them into the more prime parking spaces. They'll be parking on Bellot Street if they can't park at Heritage Lot. And I'd rather have them parking out of town visitors parking at Heritage Lot than at than on Bellot Street itself. So if I can move, I don't know how we do this in this virtual meeting, but I'd like to move the motion that we eliminate Heritage Park from this motion.
Okay, Ms. Cook, this is a fairly straightforward amendment, but help me here if there's any procedure we need. It would simply be to delete Heritage Lot. The amendment that Deputy Mayor Ward would propose would be to take that out of the amendment that's on the floor.
Yes, he'd need a seconder to do that too.
Yep. Councillor Kungl, seconded. Okay. On that amendment to remove the Heritage Park lot, is there any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question on that. Those in favor of removing the Heritage Park lot? I am as well. Those opposed, please indicate. 3, that does carry. Okay. So on the motion as amended to reclassify the other 3 lots, any further commentary? Okay, I will call the question on that. Those in favor of the motion, the amendment is amended, please indicate. Is anyone opposed? That carries unanimously. Okay, Councillor Jim Harris, you have a further amendment with regards to Tyndale Park. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'm trying to keep up on all these and getting the screens right. So yes. Well, there it is. So yes, I can read that the motion to receive the presentation concerning the waterfront operation be amended to add the following paragraphs: that the emergency order and applicable bylaws be amended to extend resident waterfront path only restrictions and to be classified as waterfront parking lots to be effective until October 15th, 2022. A, Tyndale Road. B, Tallendale Mill Road between Cox Mill Road and Tyndale Road. C, Jean Street. And that signage be installed at an estimated cost of $6,000 to be funded from Council Strategic Priorities Fund. And 2, that the staff, Legislative and Court Services Department Enforcement Services send an amendment to the application to the Ministry of Attorney General as follows. A, to increase the set fine of $100 paid parking infractions at these locations, and B, to increase the early payment to $75 for parking infractions at these locations. And I can speak to that.
Sorry, we have an amendment, and that is to add, it is similar in structure to the previous amendments to amend the emergency order and the applicable bylaws to add that list of streets, and saying that as I stall, trying to pull up the written version here myself. Sorry, folks, I think it's in the second round of circulated amendments. Sorry, Councillor Harris, what was the first road on the list?
Lehman Tyndale Road, followed by B, Tallendale Mill Road between Cox Mill and Tyndale. There's just 3, A, B, and C in Jean Street.
Yep, sorry, I've got it here now. Okay, members of council, the amendment is to amend the emergency order and applicable bylaws to add to the waterfront pass only restricted areas, Tyndale Road, Tallendale Mill between Cox Mill and Tyndale, and Jean Street. The signage for this area would be $6,600, funded from the Council Strategic Priorities Reserve, and again, to apply for the set fine of $100 and $75 for early. Ms. Cook is waving at me. Go ahead, Ms. Cook. Oh, you need a seconder. Need a seconder, Councillor Harris. Would somebody be willing to second? Councillor Kungl, I saw you again. Thank you. Okay, the amendment is on the floor. Councillor Harris, did you wish to speak to it?
No, I want to thank Councillor Thompson for bringing up the question about if it's going to be parking, whether it's a car for a non-resident or resident, if it's jammed up with cars, that's the case. But I think what we're trying to do is recognize that in previous years, we didn't have this volume. So if we have a little more restriction, hopefully we won't see that double-sided volume of traffic on these streets. So if that's the hope, if one side was made non-parking completely, I mean, I wouldn't be totally opposed to that, but that was really the thought that with past volumes, that with restricted to resident-only parking, that it wouldn't restrict residents unnecessarily, and also those who lived on the street. So, but it's a good point about the one side maybe on these bigger roads for sure, on some of these roads for sure, smaller roads too. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harris. And I certainly agree from experience at Tyndale over the last couple of weeks. Any further comments on this amendment? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question on this one. Those in favor, please indicate. Any members opposed? None. That carries. Okay, any further amendments for tonight?
Your Worship, if I can just jump in, I've been trying to get in, but I guess the notifications weren't popping up at your end. Just a point of clarification, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in regards to not the motion that we just approved, but the previous one in regards to the downtown lots. I know there was part of it included the North Marina lot. So I just want to ensure that, again, I tried pulling up the map, but I can't figure out exactly which one is the North Marina lot. I just want to ensure that it's not going to cause conflict with the marina goers that are already paying the additional $100 for a marina parking pass. Is that the same parking lot, or is that a different one?
Ms. James Reed or Mr. Forsyth? I guess we'll go to Mr. Forsyth.
Okay. Through Mayor Lehman to Councillor Harvey, it is a different lot. The marina lot is the one adjacent to the marina, kind of right along the boardwalk. The North Marina lot is on the north edge of the marina. Marina patrons parking pass does allow them to park in both the marina lot, the North Marina lot, the Lakeshore lots, and the Spirit Catcher lots. So if there isn't room in the immediate adjacent lot, they do have a few other options.
And am I safe in assuming that as long as they have their marina passes displayed, it will not cause an issue with the minimum $50 that was just approved?
Through you, Mayor Lehman and Councillor Harvey, that is correct. They will not be issued a ticket with their marina passes. And that was part of an emergency order late last week.
Okay, great. Thanks. Just wanted to confirm that there wasn't any potential conflict down the road.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Harvey. Any others who wish to comment on the motion as amended many times? Any other comments? I just had a question and one comment and wrap up. My question, Ms. James Reed or Mr. Forsyth, I guess you're the go-to tonight on parking. How long do you anticipate it would take until signage is installed? Or Ms. James Reed?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, and to the rest of members of council. We did get a preliminary quote today, and that's how we came up with the dollar value for each of the areas. And the indication was that the signage could be up within 7 working days. So we would be on this first thing tomorrow morning, and obviously we'll be updating online and doing some detailed communications around that as well. And we are planning to do some curb-back signs as well to advise people so that we discourage non-residents from parking in the area. So in each of those areas, there would be 1 or 2 curb-back signs if they don't already have them.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Kungl?
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. 3 to staff, maybe more broadly. If it takes about 7 days, just thinking ahead to the upcoming weekend, would there be any particular area that we would be wanting to prioritize with respects to being more troublesome or having more of a concern around volumes of individuals and wanting to see signage up as soon as possible.
Ms. James Reed.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Kungle. Certainly, we would be targeting our smaller community beach areas because that's where we're hearing and seeing the volume of complaints. So that would be our first priority. And as I said, 7 days is actually pretty fast. It's we will be going as quickly as we can, but that would be our targeted area.
That's great. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Ward.
Just a question of clarification. When does the free downtown parking end?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to members of council, the free downtown parking ends on the first day of school, so September the 8th.
Okay, traditionally, I know that, for example, the Spirit Catcher lot is used by a lot of people who shop downtown or work downtown. Sorry, they're using it for long-term parking. So are they going to be able to use their waterfront pass to park there for free after September 1st during the weekdays? You know what I mean? Because we're not charging residents for parking there. They can use their waterfront pass. We just made it the waterfront lot. So can they use it to park there during the days?
I think if I could, I would like Brent to jump in on that because I don't want to get the wrong information with respect to if the resident waterfront pass is valid there.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Ward, the waterfront pass is actually not, you're not able to use the waterfront pass in that lot. The waterfront pass is only able to be used south of the marina lot in the Centennial Beach area.
So we just raised the rates for the water, for example, the Spirit Catcher lot. That means no Barrie resident can park there anytime, even during a weekend or during the day? Because we've said, you just said that we're not, so do they have to pay to park? I'm just not sure how they're going to be able to, what they do in those lots we've just included. Yeah, Barrie residents want to park there. How do they do it?
Mr. Forsyth.
Sorry, yes, through yourself, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Ward. That is correct. The fee based on council's approval of the motion earlier would be $10 and $50, and it does not allow for the City of Barrie waterfront resident pass. So that is what City of Barrie residents would be paying in those lots.
So Barrie residents have to pay $10 an hour to park at the Spirit Catcher lot, for example.
That's correct.
Okay, but they can park free at the marina lot, at the Centennial Beach lot.
Correct. That is correct. Or they could park across the street in the, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to stop us here because I think we're in danger of getting very muddy here. So just to, if we could be super clear, the Spirit Catcher lot, the marina, Ms. James Reed, did you want to jump in?
Thank you. I did want to just clarify, and those members of council who have been on council for a long time will recall this conversation as the waterfront resident pass was introduced several years ago. And the concern was that people who were working in the downtown would be able to use their resident waterfront pass to park for free, and therefore will be taking some of the parking away from customers. So that's why historically the Heritage and the Spirit Catcher lot was not classified as a waterfront parking lot, and it was classified at that time as a downtown parking lot because of that issue that council wanted to address. So just from a consistency point of view, the today's motion keeps that consistent with respect to not having the resident waterfront pass valid for people who are working or shopping in the downtown right adjacent to those lots.
I guess I hope that's made abundantly clear that Barrie residents have to pay $10 an hour to park at some of those lots, because I think there's going to be a lot of confusion over that unless it's made abundantly clear on the signs when they go in, because I know those lots are used by people all the time that are coming downtown. I hate to think we're still going to start ticketing them or charging them $10 an hour. I'm not sure how to get around that, but it is a concern.
Councillor Aylwin.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I think I just need some clarification. I think this is the problem with policymaking on the fly like this with last minute amendments, because the amendment we just passed was to classify the Spirit Catcher lot as a waterfront lot. So if it's classified as a waterfront lot, we're being told now that that doesn't mean you can use the waterfront pass there. Is that true?
Yeah, I'm confused by that too. That was my understanding, Councillor Aylwin, of the amendment. Somebody else want to take a crack at clarifying here. I mean, council just passed an amendment to designate it as Waterfront Pass. Why would a Barrie resident's Waterfront Pass not make parking there for free? Ms. Cook?
Mayor Lehman, through to you, the members of council, the motion that was passed was to make these waterfront parking lots and for resident pass only restrictions until October 15th. And that was going to give staff I guess, from Brent's team time to come back with the parking strategy.
Okay, so if a Barrie resident wants to go park in the Spirit Catcher lot tomorrow, well, after we put up the signs, after I amend the order and this all comes into effect, what will Barrie residents have to pay to park in the Spirit Catcher parking lot? Anything? If they display a waterfront pass, isn't it free?
Yes, that's my understanding from the motion that is passed tonight.
Okay, does that clarify, Councillor Owen?
Yes, yeah, there was just some confusion there because we were being told the exact opposite for a second.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was confused by that too. Okay. Any other comments or questions on the motion as amended? Councillor Riepma.
I just have a question. In this long list of motions that we had from Councillor Mccann and Councillor Thompson, there's one that deals with the Johnson's Beach area. Are we going to deal with that as well, or what's happening with that?
Councillor Mccann, had you intended to move that one? I know it was prepared.
Was that prepared for me, Wendy, or was that prepared for Councillor Riepma?
Madam Clerk?
Sorry.
Oh,
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to members of council. The second document I sent along was a collection of motions I'd prepared just in case members of council wanted to put them forward. It was a copy and paste. That's why they say Councillor Mccann, Councillor Thompson, all of them. I was just going to cross off names if somebody else wanted to put them forward. So it was just a document that I had prepared for myself in advance of the meeting, anticipating any motions that may be coming forward.
So Councillor Riepma, I would say if you're interested in moving one, you should move it now.
I thought that might be the case. I will need a seconder, but I would move that one simply because I think there's a real need to be consistent in all of our waterfront lots. And certainly I think the local residents in that area certainly suffer from a lot of people parking there that definitely interferes with their enjoyment of their streets and the ability for themselves to even park on the street. So I would move that the motion to receive the presentation concerning the waterfront operations update be amended to add the following paragraphs: that the emergency order and applicable bylaws be amended to extend resident waterfront pass only restrictions and be classified as waterfront parking lots to be put into effect until October 15, 2020 to A, Shandy Bay Road between Puget Street and Garrett Crescent, Puget Street between Barrie North Shore Trail and Blake Street, C, Johnson Street between Shandy Bay Road and Blake Street, D, Campfire Court, E, Indian Arrow between Johnson Street and Algonquin Trail, F, Vancouver Street between Kempenfelt Drive and Blake Street, G, Garrett Crescent, H, Shoreview Drive between Garrett Crescent, and that signage be installed at an estimated cost of $6,600 to be funded from the Council's Strategic Priorities Reserve. And 2, that Staff and Legislative and Court Services Department send an amendment to the application to the Ministry of Attorney General as follows: to increase the set fine, $100 for paid parking infractions, and B, to increase the early payment to $75 for parking infractions. I do need a seconder.
Okay, seconder, Councillor Jim Harris. Comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, are we clear what is on the floor, members of council? Okay. It is to add to the emergency order and parking restrictions. The list of streets is listed. I'll list them again. Shanty Bay between Puget and Garrett, Puget between Barrie North Shore Trail and Blake, Johnson between Shanty Bay and Blake, Campfire Court, Indian Arrow from Johnson to Algonquin, Vancouver from Kempenfelt to Blake, Garrett, and Shoreview Drive. Any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question on the amendment. Those in favor? Are any opposed? None. That carries. Okay, any further comments, questions, or amendments on the motion as amended? Councillor Aylwin.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Since we've just gone through a flurry of amendments, I'm wondering if the clerk could maybe give us the running total of the cost of the temporary signage.
Mr. Forsyth or Madam Clerk, have you been keeping a tally?
Sorry, through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Aylwin. My tally looks like we're at $42.3 thousand.
$42,000 in temporary signage. Okay, thanks, Councillor Aylwin. Any further? Sorry, Councillor Aylwin, was that it? Just the question? Okay. Any further comments or questions? Yeah, the only one I had, James Reed, is with reference to the impact on the city's revenues and finances. We do know what the cost is for temporary signage, but I think we're all going to be very interested to see what happens in terms of parking revenues. How will council be informed whether these changes have been successful in raising additional revenue or lowering revenue?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to members of council, we are expecting to provide a report back in the form of a memo on the August 10th council meeting. So if that is sufficient for the members of council, that's what we were planning to do.
Okay, that'll give us the first couple of weeks. Would there be additional reporting coming in the fall that'll give us a roll up on what the impact on revenue was for the full summer?
For sure, through you, Mayor Lehman, we will be definitely doing that, and we also will be coming back before the October 15th date with the parking strategy, which is going to be a fulsome report on all of the issues with spillover and other recommendations.
So what you're telling me is we get to talk about parking not only one more time, but another time this fall, which is awesome. Councillor Kungl, quick question. Councillor Harris after.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Quick question back to staff. Rebecca, sorry, will there be a communication? So I know we do have sensitivities around individuals that do still visit, but is there a quick, easy, non-intensive staff resource opportunity to post a map online that just shows the roads that we motioned on, highlighted, so individuals can make a planned decision when they're coming downtown to park or along our waterfront?
Ms. James Reed.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Kungl, yes, it would be our intention to do that. We do have some GIS maps that are available when people look, and we will be doing that, and we will be making recommendations in our parking strategy that reflects the discussion today and the data that we collect over the summer. So we do have some part-time staff that will be counting cars in the area and keeping that information relevant so that you'll have that most up-to-date information the fall.
And quick follow-up, would that map be available before we start seeing temporary signage being posted?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, that would be my hope and intention, but I'm just not certain on workload this week with phase 3 also coming, so we will work towards doing that.
Thank you.
Councillor Jim Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Through you, maybe to Mr. Forsyth, and question, maybe not to get too ahead of the parking strategy and beachfront strategy and to come, but the signage that's being made for this current response, would it be of a type or done in such a way that it could be used again? Should the strategy require some of these small streets that have been identified today? Might be the better long-term play to keep them restricted in the same manner that we've done tonight. So just wondered if that's maybe in line with part of the strategy, or if the materials can be utilized in the future as well.
through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harris, there may be some that we'll be able to utilize, but unfortunately, most of it is temporary. The temporary signs will be on basically like a pylon type thing on the roads, restricting parking. Where the permanent ones, assuming that is the way we go, will be actually U-flange poles that will be driven into the ground.
So just a fun follow-up. So if we decided that, and I know from having a lot of questions and comments from residents, and this is really, and CEO Prowse talked about the perfect storm, which has really pushed a lot of these items to the front, but some of them were kind of smoldering already in some of these small neighborhoods with parks. So part of the strategy could be, this could be a temporary July, August type of restriction. Those signs get used every summer. That could be a possible outcome, in the future. Is that accurate to say?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harris, that could be a strategy for sure. One of the things that we see when we were looking at our utilization of the waterfront pre-COVID was we really only have a problem at our waterfront lots in the summer and on the weekends. Other than that, the utilization, the supply is far greater than the demand. So it could be a strategy should council want to go that way.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Forth. I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments, questions, or amendments to the motion? Seeing none, I will call the question on the motion as amended. Those in favor, please indicate. Any opposed? None. That carries unanimously. Okay, members of council, that was the only item of business for tonight. I will move to inquiries. Deputy Mayor Ward, any inquiries of staff?
None.
Members of council, any inquiries of staff? Okay, I had one. Mr. Prowse, today the province announced we'll be moving to phase 3 on Friday. We are one of many units, but not all health units around the province to go to phase 3. What city facilities are on the list for reopening in phase 3? I think playgrounds, but I wanted to confirm because I know that one is widely anticipated.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Through you to members of council. I'm not sure I have the exhaustive list. You are correct on playgrounds. We'll be working through the details from the province this week, and we'd be happy to circle back with council via email to provide a comprehensive list of the changes as we understand them. As you will recall, sometimes what they announce and what actually comes out in the regulations are slightly different. So we'd like to see it. We'd like to see the written form before providing it.
Fair enough. And the reason I asked the question publicly is I know there are a lot of residents who are already thinking that playgrounds will be open tomorrow. That is not the case. The change to the provincial order doesn't even happen, I believe, until Friday. And that's setting aside the time that we would need to get the playgrounds in shape to be reopened. Is that, have I got that right?
That's through you, Mayor Lehman, to members of council. That is correct. And we are, I believe, waiting for some information as well back from the health unit as it relates to the playgrounds to make sure we're in compliance with their direction and recommendations.
Great. Thank you, sir. Announcements, Deputy Mayor Ward, any announcements? Any announcements, members of council? Okay, I think I'm going to forego mine, except that because there are people on who are interested in waterfront passes, there is still a delay in receiving resident waterfront passes because of volume. Members of council, please help us spread this message. If you haven't received it yet, you will. And if you get a ticket in the interim, you can have it canceled with proof of residency. With that, I'll ask the Deputy Mayor to introduce the bylaws. Deputy Mayor Ward.
I believe there's only one, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed, Bill 69.
Okay, it is moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed, Bill 70. Any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask you all to indicate. Those in favor? Is anybody opposed? None. That carries. This is the last meeting until August 10th for Barrie City Council. For those watching, we will see you then. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Rima, second by Councillor Natalie Harris. We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. a great summer, and we will see you in a month.